Hello and welcome to the Sisters for Fitness Wellness Show. I'm Stephanie Gaines-Bryant. Our guest today is Nancy Laubenthal, and she is an animal volunteer. And today we're talking about the benefits of pet ownership and how owning a pet can be so good for your mental health. She volunteers at Bowie Claw and also for Paws. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Stephanie. So
tell me, what is Bowie Claw?
Bowie Claw is Bowie's Citizens for Local Animal Welfare, and PAWS is Patuxent Animal Welfare Society. And Bowie Claw is a kitten and cat rescue. They do the full range of services associated with that, from trapping kittens, feral cats, stray cats, getting them seen by a vet.
And how busy is it in this area?
It's quite busy. Normally in the wintertime we see a slowdown in terms of how many kittens are being born, but this past year it's been very active. We haven't had a break in kitten rescue. So it's very active.
So what made you get started with volunteering?
Well, I had a cat for almost 20 years, and when she passed away, I was really devastated, and as was my husband. I wasn't ready to adopt another animal just yet, so I began volunteering with the Prince George's County Animal Shelter. I started walking dogs and socializing cats. And then I learned that Bowie City Hall also needed people to walk dogs. They would find a stray and put it in their holding room and keep it for a few days to try and find the owner. And in the evenings they would need volunteers to walk the dogs. And then they opened a cat holding room. And that's when I really got involved taking care of the cats and kittens, mostly kittens, which means feeding them, giving them fresh water, cleaning their enclosures. We have volunteers come in twice a day, morning and evening, and the holding room has 6 enclosures. And a kitten family would be in one enclosure, like if all the kittens from a litter would be in one. But if there was a stray cat, they would be in a separate
So have you always been a cat person, or have you owned other animals?
I was not a cat person, actually. I owned a dog. Most of my adult life I've had pets. I owned a dog for quite a while and wasn't too comfortable or didn't have too much experience with cats. But a little kitten came walking up the street and my husband picked it up, and we ended up adopting that cat, and then I learned to love kittens and cats. I mean, they have personalities and they love you almost as much as dogs.
Well, what is the difference, would you say, having owned both? What is the difference between the care for the cat and the care for the dog?
Cats are much more independent, so they're a little bit easier, I would say, to care for. Dogs need to be walked, played with. They have more energy usually than cats. And if you travel, it's actually easier to have somebody come in your house and take care of your cat once a day, as opposed to a dog who needs to go out 2 or 3 times a day.
Have you seen them live peacefully together? Could a family possibly own both a cat and a dog and have peace in the family?
Absolutely, yes. Lots of people have cats and dogs. It would be important how you introduce them to one another. You can't just throw them together. They have to be introduced slowly, get to know one another. And if you have an established pet, then you might want to bring in a younger animal. I mean, for me, my dog was older and I brought in a kitten and she accepted the kitten. And then even when the cat grew up, I brought in another kitten, and both the cat and dog accepted that kitten.
Well, what should a family do to get ready for pet ownership? Should they foster first, would you say, or can you go right into ownership?
I think you can go right into ownership. I mean, fostering is a great idea. But I think if you read up on having a dog and having a cat and what's involved so that you go into it with your eyes open, yeah, I think you can just jump right in.
What was the most eye-opening thing for you when you decided to own a cat? What were some of the things you had to learn?
Probably trusting the cat and going slowly and letting her have her space, not constantly picking her up and hugging her that you just want to do with the little kitten. And animals have moods too, so you have to be aware of that and give them their space as well.
So that you don't end up taking the pet back, what are some of the things you should prepare yourself? What are some of the things you should talk to your children about in adopting a pet? How do you know, or how do you get the family ready for this big project? I always said owning a pet is like having another child in some ways.
Yeah.
So how do you prepare yourself to take on this additional responsibility?
Well, I think the parents really need to know how much work is involved with raising an animal, the cost involved, because there's, food and equipment and vet bills, and the children also need to learn how to interact with the animal.
Yes, that's very important.
Right, right. And it's really a great learning experience for kids. They learn responsibility. They can have this animal as their buddy and tell them their troubles and things like that, and really bond.
When it comes to the different costs, like you said, you have to factor in things like vet bills. And so once you purchase, or not purchase the cat, or once you decide to adopt a pet, is the pet, for example, at Bowie, Claw, or at Paws, are the pets neutered and all that good stuff?
Yes, we adopt out pets who have been spayed and neutered. They have all their initial shots. They have a chip so that if they were to get out of the house, they could be, you could locate the owner.
And is that new,
healthy.
or that's something that's been for a while? Of course, when I was a kid, we didn't have a chip. So is that something which is fantastic, but is that something that's just come about over the last couple of years, or?
It's been true as long as I've been volunteering, which has been about 7 years.
Okay.
So I think rescue organizations, they know all these good things to do for a pet, like the chipping. So I think that's kind of standard practice.
After they do get their shots, is there anything else that you need to prepare yourself for as far as vets go? Do they need to go every 6 months? Do they need to go every year? Or just like humans, if you get sick, then you go to the doctor? Or is it something you should maintain? Should they have maintenance visits and things like that?
They should have wellness visits once a year. And of course, when they're young, there's a series of shots that they would get in their early years.
Is that like every 6 months or every?
Every year.
Okay.
Yeah. And rabies shots, it can be every year or every 3 years. They have different shots available. And then of course, if the pet does have some sort of illness or concern, then that's an extra trip to the vet.
How should you choose cat food for cats? Of course, is there something different that you feed the kittens opposed to feeding adult cats. How do you choose the right products to put into your cat system?
Right. Well, you want to have healthy food for them. Kittens, they're kittens until they're about 1 year old. So you feed them kitten food, which has extra nutrients to help with their growth. Once they're over 1 year old, you can switch to adult food. There are brands that are better. Some brands are better than others. Your vet could give you guidance on what are the good healthy foods.
Have you had a finicky cat that likes some
Yes.
things and doesn't like others?
Yes.
And trying to figure out what's the best?
In fact, at the kennels, we will feed them, the kittens, a certain type of food, and then all of a sudden the new batch of kittens doesn't like that food, so we have to switch to something else. My cats, you go through a lot of testing. My cats have finally settled on one type of food, and even then, sometimes they eat it and sometimes they don't.
Well, do all of them like the particular thing, or would you have two who like this brand and then two who don't? And what do you do?
So I have 4 cats. 3 of them are mine and 1 is a foster. The foster was more of a picky eater, so she has a separate food. So
what is the difference in fostering opposed to ownership? Does it go through for example, at Bowie Claw, do you go through a process where it's an application process and they check out your family? How does that work, where
Yes.
you can become a foster parent?
Someone interested in fostering does have to fill out an application. I'm not sure if a home visit is necessary, probably not, but you would want to have a separate room where you can foster this animal.
Why would you need a separate room?
You don't want to just throw them in with your other pets. Well, initially they're going to be scared. So I always start the fosters in my hall bathroom. So there's nowhere they can hide that I can't get to them. They can go behind the toilet, but I can just reach back there and grab them if I need to. Then once they're socialized, because a lot of the fosters are feral, young
What does that
kittens.
mean? Okay.
Well, they've been living outside.
Okay.
They've never been in a house. So they're trapped, and they come to the Bowie cat holding room. And if they need a little bit extra attention to be socialized, they might go home with a foster who can work with them more one-on-one and more than just twice a day.
So it takes a couple, if the cat is feral, it takes a couple of weeks or to kind of get them acclimated to home living?
Yes, it takes them weeks for them to trust you, or it can take them weeks. Some are braver than others, but it can take weeks before they would come out from behind the toilet to eat their food or come out to play with a wand toy or a mouse toy. And once they're brave enough, and I know they're just not going to hide all the time, then I have a separate foster room. It's got the cat trees and beds and other toys and a bigger space for them to roam. And once they're fully socialized, then they go into the adoption stream. We hold adoption events once a month at Crunchies in Crofton.
Okay.
And the other place they can go is to the Petco stores. Paws has cats in the Bowie store and the Annapolis store. And then there, they are seen by customers, and hopefully someone would fall in love with them and want to adopt them.
And how does that work? You know, people just come in when they have events. They invite people to just come in and take a look at.
Right.
And they're different ages, or is it just kittens?
They're all different ages, because we do get surrenders, and they are typically older cats, so they can be any age, from 1 to probably 13 or something like that.
How did the surrenders adjust to a new environment? If if a person's had a cat for 10 years and the person passes away, and so how does that cat do the cats make that adjustment?
They are very resilient, and they usually do make that adjustment. You need to know their backstory. Maybe some of the older cats don't like dogs, so you wouldn't want to put the cat into a home with a dog, obviously. Or they have been around children, so then you can introduce them to a home with children.
Do the personalities different from types of cats? Just like with dogs, there are certain dogs who have a pit bull is going to have a different personality from a pug, for example. Do you find that different breeds have different personalities?
Possibly. I don't have that.
Or do you have a preference?
That much experience, but I will tell you that black cats I have found, because the first 2 cats I adopted after my other cat passed away were 2 black siblings, two brothers, and I adopted them at 3 months old, and they are the gentlest cats. And my experience at the kennels and at Petco also is that the black cats have the best personality. They're very gentle, easygoing.
I have a best friend who absolutely swears by black cats.
Yes,
that's all
I
she's
do too.
ever known is black cats, and it takes me a minute because, of course, there's some terrible myths that surround black cats.
Right, and that's why my husband and I wanted to adopt the black cats. There's a lot of superstition associated with them. And so sometimes they're the last ones to be adopted. So I would say that most of the volunteers have black cats just for that reason.
Wow.
You know, they know that they need homes, and they provide them.
One of the reasons I wanted to talk to you is because animals can be very therapeutic.
They can.
And especially like during the pandemic, I heard a lot of people saying how your animal may have been the only contact you had if you couldn't go into work because your workplace was closed. Your family's away and can't visit because of the pandemic. So it may have been just you and your pet.
Right.
And I heard a lot of people say that pet was almost a lifesaver for them in this time when you didn't have much communication or physical touch with anyone or anything else.
Yes, pets are excellent companions. When you touch them and talk to them and play with them, that just does so much for your happiness and contentment. They need you, you need them.
And you mentioned earlier that you and your husband had a pet for 20 years. How does that pet become just a part of the family?
She definitely was a part of the family. I mean, the grief that we suffered was pretty intense, like losing a family member.
Because they're with you from day to day.
Yes.
You're feeding them, you're walking, they're part of the family.
And she had health problems near the end of her life, and we helped her through all of those things. So yeah, it was a big loss.
And you know, in this economy, a lot of people are struggling with food prices and stuff. There are several places who offer the free food for pets if you want to make sure that your pet is properly fed. So there are accommodations made now, even in this economy, for people who can give pets a good home.
Right. In fact, Bowie has a pet pantry for people who are needy, who need help with getting cat food or litter or other supplies.
And if you have a cat, what are some of those things you do need? Like you said, go ahead.
Yeah, cat trees, toys, dry food, wet food, treats. Those are the basic things, I guess.
Well, let's do this now. Let's introduce, you brought a guest.
I did.
Seldom do I have a guest bring a guest, but you brought a guest. So let's take a look at your guest.
Come here. Come here.
Look at those eyes.
So this little guy is Marcel.
Okay.
And Marcel is about 6 months old. He was found in Lanham. He was just wandering around outside, and a kind person picked him up and called Bowie Claw. They couldn't keep him. So he came to us, and it was very obvious that he was someone's pet because he was so friendly. And
so those are some of the things you could tell by just that it was clear that he was someone's pet.
right, because he came right up to the people. If it's a feral or kitten who hasn't had a lot of human contact, they would run and hide, and you'd have to trap them. You'd have to lure them into a trap with food. But he was friendly. So he was brought to the Bowie kennels,
Mm-hmm.
and he was neutered because he was old enough for that. And
How could you tell how old?
they can tell by the weight sometimes.
Okay.
Like when they're very young, it's usually 1 pound per month.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times they can tell by the teeth. Cats have, I think they're called milk teeth,
Mm-hmm.
like a baby tooth, and they can tell if that's fallen out. I forget how.
Oh,
at what
okay.
age.
And you
So
said he's about 6 months.
He's about 6 months, and so we got him spayed and got all his shots, and he quickly moved to Petco because he was so friendly. So now he's at Petco.
And he's available.
He's available, and he would make someone a very nice pet.
Can you tell which ones would be good with children? Like if a family is looking for a pet, and he seems very, very gentle.
Yes, yes. I think by handling the animal, if they're not like maybe swatting or biting,
Mm-hmm.
then that's a good indication that they would be good with kids, because kids are they're gonna want to love on that animal.
Yes, even when the animal doesn't want to be loved,
Yes.
they're going to want to love
And
on
they're
that
gonna
animal.
let you know.
He is absolutely very, very gentle.
He is. He was a little wound up earlier, so I wasn't sure what he was going to do. So I put a harness on him just in case I needed a leash.
What would be the benefits of him being in a home with just one person, maybe a couple or just one person?
I think that would be fine. I think cats, they are kind of solo animals. Whoopsie.
Mm-hmm.
So they're fine by themselves in a family. I think it's nice to adopt two if you can, because then they have a buddy.
And so they are happier when they have a buddy, someone.
I think so, but they're also happy when they're by themselves, and some cats prefer to be by themselves.
And would you say adopt them together, or maybe have one for a couple of months or maybe a year before taking on another one? Or is it best that they immediately?
No, either way works. I mean, if you know that you want 2 cats, then probably adopting siblings or something would be best. But we also have situations where people adopt 1 cat and then they see how that goes, and then they might bring a 2nd cat into the family. And you introduce them and it's all good.
I lived in Houston for a little while when I was single. This was many years ago, and my roommate had a cat, a silver tabby. Her name was Whisper, and Whisper only liked me when I was sad. So Whisper could sense when I was sad. She would come up and she would kind of rub against my leg or whatever, but as soon as I was okay, she'd go away and I wouldn't see her.
I think cats are very intuitive.
That's what I wanted to bring, the fact that they are very, very in tune to your moods,
Right.
in tune to who you are.
Right. And we've had volunteers who have been sick and their cats come and stay with them.
Wow.
The whole time they're kind of sitting with them in bed till they feel better.
So as we wrap up the show this morning, can you tell us what the process is if someone is interested in contacting Bowie Claw or Paws as far as looking into
Adoption.
Yes.
Yeah. Bowie Claw has a Facebook page and an Instagram page and a website. So
so
they
people
can be contacted that way.
And like you said, they do
a Petco store.
Yeah.
And look at some of the cats that are available. There are application forms there for people interested in adopting, or they can come to the adoption event. We're also looking for volunteers, and volunteering is also, I think, very good for the soul. You connect with like-minded people, you get engaged with a community, make new friends. You're giving back, and it just feels good.
And you can go to the webpage of either of these places to also find out about opportunities to volunteer as well.
Yes.
And do you get one animal for the volunteer, or do you take on several? How does that work?
You mean for fostering?
Yes, yes.
For fostering, it varies. Sometimes, I mean, I've had 4 kittens from the same litter at one time. Often it's just one or 2.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And like you said, you just mentioned that it's a very rewarding experience.
Yes.
And has it been rewarding for you?
Yes, it has been. I love the kitties. They're just so adorable. And when you see the progress that they make, that is heartwarming as well. And then when you see them finally adopted into a happy home, then that's the best reward.
Nancy, you are truly a blessing. Thank you so much for joining me today.
My pleasure.
We've been talking to Nancy Laubenthal, and she's an animal volunteer, and also we'll put the information at the end of the show. People who are interested in contacting Bowie Claw or interested in Paws, and so we can get people more involved. If there's a need out there, let's make sure that people know it and people do something about it, like you. You've been watching the Sisters for Fitness Wellness Show. I'm Stephanie Gaines-Bryant. Enjoy the rest of your day.